Sweden is the fifth largest country in Europe. Most of the land is covered by forests, and it is home to almost 100,000 lakes. In the Scandinavian mountains, which borders Norway and Sweden, is the highest point in Sweden, which is the Kebnekaise Mountain, which is 6,903 feet above sea level. Sweden is one of the least populated countries in Europe. It is home to around 10 million people, and 86% of the population lives in an urban setting. The majority of the population is made up of Swedes, which are a part of a North Germanic ethnic group. Sweden is also home to 5 national minorities: Jews, Roma, Sami, Swedish Finns, and Tornedlers. The most popular religion in Sweden is Christianity. However, some Christians are considered out of faith. Around 58% of the population consider themselves members of the Church of Sweden, while only 19% of the population claims to be religious. Previously, Catholicism was the main religion of Sweden during the 11th century to the 16th century. During the Protestant Reformation, the Church of Sweden emerged as a national church of Sweden. Another popular religion is the Islam and Orthodox Eastern churches. Some interesting facts about Sweden is that 50% of the land that is covered by forests is privately owned. It is one of the biggest countries in Europe, but the population as of 2012 was 9.5 million. It is home to 90,000 lakes and 3,000 kilometers of sea. Sweden imports other countries' rate and has a low employment and birth rate.
Hello, my name is Ocean Robin, and I represent you some significant events in Sweden. First, I want to warn you that English is not my native language, so my accent may sometimes prevent you from understanding a few words, but I will do my best for this presentation. During the period from 800 to 1050 after Christ, Sweden was not yet considered as a country. The Swedes were part of the Vikings and were therefore in a period known as the Viking Age. The Swedish people are a conglomerate of various tribes. They are Germanic origin, while others were sometimes related to the Israelites of the Bible. The medieval period in Sweden was very important. Things like the unification of Sweden in 900 with Olaf Skotkonung as the first king were considerable steps in the advancement of the Swedish people. In 1829, a French monk named Saint Ansgar introduced the Roman Catholic faith to Sweden for the first time, but this did not bring much success. Then, in the 10th century, Catholics missionaries from Germany and Great Britain came to Sweden, and it was at this time that Christianity began to slowly spread in the following centuries. Holus Petri, who was born in Örebro in 1493, was the first reformer in Sweden. The Reformation is defined as a will to return to Christianity, which means to see religion and life in a different way. His brother, Laurentius Petri, became the first Protestant archbishop in Sweden from 1516 to 1518. Olarius studied at the University of Wittenberg, which is located in Eastern Germany, at the same time as Martin Luther began the Reformation in 1517. Then, in 1524, he was appointed Secretary of Stockholm by Gustav Vasa. Thanks to this, he gained a lot of influence, was able to preach, and with Laurentius Indre, translate the New Testament into Swedish. The New Testament was completed in 1526, and the Old Testament, translated mainly by Ola's brother Laurentius, was completed in 1541. This first whole Bible in Swedish was called the Bible of Gustav Vasa, after the reign of the king. However, the Swedish Bible was also revised during the reign of Karl XII and published in 1703. This version of the Bible, which like the Bibles of Gustav Vasa, was based on the original Hebrew and correct Greek text, is called the Bible of Carl XII.
This slide covers the major theological figures in Sweden. The first major theological figure is Bridget of Sweden. Bridget of Sweden was a famous saint who helped construct the Lutheran Church in the 13th century. Bridget wanted to create a religious community, and she did this through obtaining authorization by the Pope to create the New Order, a new community of monasteries. Bridget of Sweden was known for her social activism, outreach in communities, and her work against church abuses. Another major theological figure is Helena Ekblom. Helena Ekblom was a famous Swedish church leader in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Her preaching consisted of sharing her own apocalyptic visions and focusing on the punishment of sinners. After religious activity outside of the state church was banned in the early 19th century, Ekblom's preaching became more famous, and her followers began to create unrest. Helena Ekblom was arrested in 1807 after she created a revolution, and people were not adapting to the Catholic doctrine. The Sweden government sent her to a mental asylum for preaching her sermons. Margaret I. Kumla was another major theological figure in Sweden. She began to preach at the same time the Church of Kumla was experiencing the phenomena of poltergeist. Her claimed visions made her famous nationwide, and her preaching attracted a multitude of villages. Kumla's actual preaching was not controversial. However, authorities arrested her for preaching since she was a woman. Peter Ljunggren is another theological figure. He is the most recent Swedish church leader and was born in 1954. He founded the World Impact Ministries while he was a college student and a Bible college, which is uncommon in Sweden.
Some contemporary issues in the church is that there's record numbers of people that have left the Church of Sweden. There's also a decline in church membership because the younger generations won't take over. There's a removal of official state church due to separation of church and state. There's a rise of radical secularism, and female priests outnumber male priests. Some contemporary issues in society is that the minimum hourly wage isn't high. Unemployment is much higher for those under 25. Environmental problems such as pollution, alarming rates of drug dealers and high access to every drug, high rates of gang-related crime, and unprecedented levels of attacks and shootings from gangs.